All right, welcome, everyone. It is so good to be back. Sorry for the late start. We definitely had some technical difficulties. I'm not sure if we still do. It seems like we might be good, but maybe we aren't. But we're gonna go ahead and get started. It looks like we're good now. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to thank everyone for joining us. Apologize for starting late due to technical difficulties, but we are here. There is a storm, so I want to recognize that. And hopefully we are able to stay the entire time that we are set to stay with you today. But if anything happens, we just want to let you know that, we understand technology, we also understand Mother Nature. We respect Mother Nature. So if anything happens, we will do our best to come back or to do it another day. While we go ahead and get started, I wanted to get a chance to introduce our panelists. Today we have Perspectives with Black Men, and this part 4 of the 10-part series is on liberating lyricists. And I'm really excited to have these 5 gentlemen here with us. I consider all of them pretty much my brothers, so it's good to be able to have them here to share with all of us their perspectives on their art and all of those things. Hopefully, in the entrance of the show, you were able to see a poem that I wrote called Guilty to Death. So maybe we'll have a chance to talk about that as well. So first, we are going to introduce Victor. Victor is currently residing in New York, and he is a poet and a singer. So we want to welcome him. He actually, before he introduces himself, he has there was this program in college called Color of Drums, which G, I believe, started, and we'll introduce him in a second. But it was just so amazing. I don't even remember what he was talking about, but he had this song, Sweet in the Morning, and I have remembered that. I had never heard it before. I have remembered it since. So thank you for always sharing your art and your talents with us. So Victor, if you want to introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. I really do appreciate that. I have to say, over the last many years, I've not been able to let go of Sweet in the Morning. So thank you for recognizing that. And thank you to G for even putting that in the show, because that is my Color of Drums claim to fame. So I do appreciate that. Yeah, I'm a storyteller, I'm a writer, I'm a poet. I'm from Detroit. Um, and as you said, I currently live in New York City, which is a tough place to live right now, especially during protests, especially during this pandemic. And it's hard, I won't lie, it's difficult. It was difficult without a pandemic and without protests, but it's definitely difficult now. And so opportunities to share like this is very important to me because I've been under this stay-at-home situation since before the mayor of New York City even made that a thing. So I've been inside for a long time. But as poets do, as writers do, as storytellers do, I've been writing the entire time. I've also been revisiting some of my work from many years ago, things that I thought I no longer needed to read, but we find ourselves in situations where history repeats itself. And so I'm just glad to be here with my brothers to even discuss the current events and to discuss how we maintain as artists. And I'm just looking forward to hearing what everyone has brought and has to say today. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes. Thank you, Victor. One of my really good friends and brothers. I want to thank you for joining us. No problem. And we're going to go ahead and introduce the next panelist today. For you, we have from Akron, Ohio, Darius Simpson. He is a poet and a phenomenal one at that. And so I want to introduce him and have him come on. So you can unmute and turn your video on. We'll get started with you, young brother.
Sure.
And I just want to say, my first time meeting you, which I didn't even know you went to Eastern until afterwards.
Yeah.
Was there was a movie premiere at the University of Akron, and one of my students, Stacy, was in it, and you were in it as well, I think. And I met you there, but I didn't really know some of the connections until later when we connected on Facebook, and I saw some of the things you were doing. So, and you were also in alchemy too, right?
Yeah.
All right. You're right. So,
yeah.
Welcome.
That was my bio. That was it. You said all the things. Yeah. I'm excited to be here. Have conversations in the right now. Yeah, there's a lot to talk about now. It's really essential for us to get organized, not just as Black men, but as Black people in general, particularly in the Black masses. So I'm excited to share thoughts, discuss things. Yeah, I'm really simple. I don't have too much to say. I live in Berkeley, California, but I'm in Michigan for right now. Be here for maybe like another month or so. And yeah, excited to talk to y'all. Oh, wait, rewind. This is like the first time there's 5 different people, or three other people on the same call that even know what the Color of Drums is, no Eastern, no PS. So I'm really excited to be here with y'all. Shout out to G and the organization he started for really getting me into performing. I discovered performance poetry. 1 second. sitting here with the window open. I have to let the car pass. I discovered poetry performance my like junior year, senior year, but didn't really have an outlet or a space to try it out in Akron. There were some spaces in Cleveland, but no cars. So when I got to college, Poetry Society was the first space where I had other poets that were performing, writing regularly, gave me some feedback, had me like stop mid poem. It had me, sat me down and humbled me, like your poems are not as hot as you think they are, which is important feedback for any artist at any time. So really grateful to be on the same joint with G. Eternally grateful for Poetry Society and all that the organization poured into me. Yeah, the end.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Next we have Ephraim Nehemiah. He is from Cleveland, and he's a performance poet. So want to bring him on if he can unmute and join us. I've known him since he was a freshman in college, and he's become like one of my little brothers. And he was one of our student leaders. We called it empowerment leaders at the time, for the Male Empowerment Network back in 2012. So I want to just introduce him and have him share more about himself.
Yes. What's good? So I was actually born in Oakland, California, but like I lived in too many cities to claim any one of them. But I did go to high school in Akron. Also went to 8th grade is when I got to Akron. So spent some time there as well. Just moved to Baltimore from Cleveland though. And yeah, also got started writing a little bit when I was in high school, but really started to invest myself and growing my craft and growing as an artist when I was in college. I went to a competition for colleges, saw Darius there as well, and like my mind just expanded so much as far as what the art could be, and just been going after it since then. And so I feel like art is very important. It's a very powerful tool, and it's something that I fully invest myself in to manifest the future I want to see. So I'm very excited to be on this call and speak with everybody. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Ephraim. Next we have G himself, the legend, one of our, I would just call him, I think he's prophetic, if you ask me. So I want him to come on and share something about himself. He is an educator and a poet, and I would even call him a philosopher. So, and those of you who know him knows he has some isms, but not in a bad way. Things that you actually sit back and think about, and you say, "Wow, that was pretty profound." So, G, you want to join us? Turn your video on.
Hey, y'all, absolutely. Thank you all for those great introductions, definitely ahead of mine. Yeah, I do get to jump in as a poet. Now, when we talk about Poetry Society and being able to found that organization, we just had a group meeting not too long ago on a Zoom open mic, and to find out really that it's been 20 years. So about 20 years, I was able to help found the Poetry Society at Eastern Michigan University. Poetry was way more important than what was being allowed. Same thing that everybody else is saying. Black Student Union was only doing it once a month. And the hip hop explosion was taking over the campus. And I thought that poetry was way more important. I thought it was way more relatable. And I just thought it needed the same stage as everything else. And so I was lucky enough to just meet with the right folks, along the way. Victor, being able to get out the way and pass the torch to people like Darius. So I don't necessarily always get to perform as much as I would like to, but I definitely take credit for performing with great poets, for founding some really great poetry things, for mentoring poets, and then continuing to be an educator and still share that same mentoring that comes through poetry, and really have an opportunity now just to talk about it. I mean, I think everything we're seeing now is poetic, and if at some point you're not capturing some of this, I think you're missing out on it. the way that we see people writing, the way that we look at photography right now, videos. I mean, everybody in their own sense is becoming a poet of these times. So just in the sense of being able to write it down and perform it, I'm glad to be a part of that and sharing this conversation, what's happening right now. So thank you. Thank you, everybody, for allowing me to be here.
Thank you very much. Everybody, next and last, but certainly not least, we have with us Damon, aka Maximum Truuuth, here with us from Detroit. He's a lyricist and a political consultant. And we'll talk about some of his work in that area, maybe when he shares his bio. And Damon and I go back from college as well. He went to a different college. We won't blame him for that. But we both are members of the same fraternity, and we became friends and went through the Alpha Academy together, the College Leadership Academy, and that really, I think, strengthened our brotherhood there. So learned a lot about this brother. Very much so respect his passion. And if you don't know, he's the person who asked me when I was trying to get everybody else to run for office. I said, we need to change some things. We need to change some things. Damon said, bro, why aren't you running? Why are you asking everybody else? So thank you, brother. You are the one who really put that fire under me. So I want to give the floor over to Damon.
Hey, you are hilarious, man. I appreciate it, Brother Akbar, Dr. Akbar, for inviting me on. Yes, we go way back. Damon Childers, aka Max Truuuth, Maximum Truuuth, longtime lyricist, rap artist, political consultant, activist. You name it, I done did it. Started off in student government at Wayne State University. I hear everybody went to Eastern side, Eastern, but Wayne State in the building. Also used to attend Morehouse College. So having that experience at historically Black college definitely was a fire lit under me. And then my fraternity, as NJ shared, our time serving within our fraternity, our leadership camp, definitely strengthened our brotherhood. So I'll just have to reiterate that. And as far as myself, I have a background, one of the first staff on the ground for the Obama for America campaign. Far back in 2008, I was a candidate for Detroit Charter Commission in 2009, and I've helped out on several local campaigns for state reps and charter commissioners, and even helped out the Akbar for Akron campaign a little bit here from Detroit. So glad to be joining everybody. And I think it was great to bring together a panel of lyricists and artists, because I think as artists, we're sometimes, more often than not, you're charged with sort of processing a lot of emotion and taking input from the world and sort of processing that and bringing it back out into a more digestible, cohesive picture. And hopefully we can evolve on that a little bit more as we discuss amongst brothers.
Yes. So if everyone can join us here with their videos. I want to thank each and every one of you for introducing yourselves and being here today, because I think that this is going to be an opportunity for all of us to share. For me, when I started this series, I wanted to make a difference. I wanted us to be able to have an opportunity to talk through issues. And to me, because I am a big fan of all of yours and art in general, I thought it was just so important that we bring on artists and hear from their perspectives, because they empower, you challenge us to think differently. You show us through your art the emotion that people are feeling. I just think that it's amazing what artists can do. And so because I know some profound artists and some Black brothers, I just felt like if we're going to talk about change and where we need to go next, I want to hear directly from people like you. And so with that, I want to ask that first question. When you do your art, when you do your poetry or your performances and your pieces, when you think about that, what are the type of issues that you really focus on? Are there things that you do more than others? And then how do you approach that within your art? And we're going to start with Victor.
Thank you. That's a wonderful question. I don't know any other way to answer that except to say that I am of this Nina Simone school when it comes to artists. And she notoriously said that the duty of an artist is to talk about the times we find ourselves in. And I write a lot about being Black. I write about being queer. I write about trauma. If you're looking for some pretty pieces, you better go find Mary Oliver because she got some wonderful ones. But I haven't done that yet because those are not the times that I find myself. And so I find myself writing things that are repetitive. I find myself dedicating pieces to Philando Castile and to Ayanna Stanley Jones and to all of these people who have showed up in my life that I shouldn't even know. So I write a lot about that. And I think that what it does for me is allows me to purge some of this energy. And if it's received, it's received, but I just put it out because it's better to get it out of me than to have it fester and then become a mental health problem or a situation that I have to use substances or other methods of dealing with.
Thank you very much, Victor. Darius, did you want to go next?
Yeah. Can you repeat the question for me?
I can. I really can. So I'm thinking about what issues that you typically cover in your art and what approach do you typically take to it?
Word. Yeah, I write a lot about always coming from the self. So write a lot about Blackness, Black boyhood in particular, and how that exists out in the world up against these other identities and systems of oppression. And so what ways that I struggle for my own liberation or shift toward humanness, and what ways that I get in the way of other folks' liberation and humanness. Yeah, I don't know. I write a lot about, I dig what Victor said about the role of the artist. I've been thinking a lot about that right now, particularly the one that says to make the revolution irresistible. And I had some like pushback against that at first for what it calls for the artist, and how I understood of like beautifying revolution. But I was thinking today and like changing it to access. And so if we translate what it means to do revolutionary work, to be a revolutionary, or even to point out the ways that folks are already engaged in revolutionary tactics, then that too is making it irresistible. So yeah, I write a lot of, I get at that. Most of what I'm doing, I say things that I may not be able to say in person, or not in person, but in prose or out loud to individuals or to systems. So a lot of my work is trying to get at things that I may not have readily, get at conversations that I may not be able to have myself. So whether that's with family, whether that's with racism, with the whole of a history of the United States, dehumanizing and genociding Black folks, and that too. So yeah.
All right, thank you very much. Ephraim, do you want to go?
Yeah, also echoing what Darius was saying as far as coming internally and speaking. I want to speak to the me that exists outside myself. as well, making sure I'm creating the work that I want to see. And so whatever things I feel like are impacting me the most at a given time, that's going to be on my spirit, and that's going to come out in the work. And that changes over time as well in the way that I want to approach it. There was a time where I was heavily consumed by Black death and the injustices that was leading to that. And even when I wanted to speak of joy, my spirit wasn't in the place where I can do that authentically. And so that came out in all my poems. And there was another time where I had to constantly see us alive and put that into the work. And I had to get through that pain to be able to imagine that joy. And so it was that was something that was going on, or just anything that's really on my heart, on my mind at that time is really going to be what I'm speaking to. But like I said, also making sure that I'm focusing on myself and putting myself in that poem. And like I said, preaching to me as opposed to telling other people like, this is what y'all need to do. Telling myself, what is it that I need to do? What is the journey that I need to take? What is the information that I need to ingest in order to, manifest the future that I want to see? So.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We'll go with Damon and then G.
Yeah, well, definitely to piggyback a few things that's already been said and that overlap. I find myself, I write a lot, and sometimes, and these brothers could probably speak to it. You might write a few lines or jot a few things down that come to you that you're inspired by. Then they might evolve over the next days or weeks. But in kind of preparing to meet and discuss on this panel tonight, I was kind of looking through some of my poems that I want to say I forgot about, but it's you kind of forget how much you can accumulate. Now I relate to having sort of these cathartic pieces that I've written for, some of these fallen names that we hear. Ayanna Jones, Tamir Rice, Eric Garner, Sandra Bland, and to have this happen again, I think I wrote a piece about George Floyd literally that next morning after I heard about his death, or maybe 2 mornings later after I seen the tape, probably, which was very traumatic. Um, and that right there, that feeling of traumatic, the potential PTSD that us as Black men might get from constantly seeing these images in the media or shared on social media, um, it has just become a natural instinct almost to just write it out because you do get frustrated. And I believe that night after I saw that tape, I couldn't even sleep. I probably had a very hard time sleeping. I argue with say I didn't sleep for a couple of days, but I think it's a part of the process, that empathy to try to put myself in his shoes, to channel that pain that his family might be feeling, to try to synthesize that moment for the listener or the reader of what I may produce, and letting everybody who receives it, get with it from what they will. Because once it's out there, it's out there. But my approach basically is to continue to try to be an empath and a communicator, and to be a vessel for that pain, and to get it out with words that trigger emotion, and also hopefully, it's always my hope as an artist to trigger change in that person, self-reflection, or them maybe tapping into another higher sense of self, and hopefully that translates into action in the world. So that's pretty much my approach and how I do things.
G, do you want to go? Or maybe you're trying.
Yeah, so I'm trying to recall exactly how you asked the question. But if I'm thinking anymore, and even in relation to what Max Truuuth is saying here, is that I think what all of everyone has just said is that we are writing the things that we aren't asked. You know, not everybody's going to get the video camera in front of them. Not everybody's going to have, you know, opportunity to be, you know, with a bunch of followers that listen or, you know, are impacted by everything that you say. And so most writers generally find themselves responding to a world that does not hear them. So when I think about it in phases for myself, you know, as a younger person, 20 some years old, my stuff was on fire. You know, I could cuss out everybody from the top to the bottom, you know. But now I write things that I think they're a little bit more reflective. I think that showed a little bit more of my own growth. When I look back on some of the things that I've written previously, I'm like, wow, I was definitely, you know, on top of it, you know. And now I look at it with a few more things to risk, right? And we all understand the risk in the things that we say. We watched all of our leaders lose their lives based on the things that they say. And I think even more as a poet, we're even just as clear as conscious as we are to the things that are happening around us, we're also clear to things that have happened to us. And so with that, I think what I hear everybody saying is that, yeah, we're writing what nobody asked us, right? And nobody asked Max Truuuth the next day how he was dealing, right? He just got to say it, right? And I think we all come from that same place. Nobody's going to stop us and say, Black man, how are you really? And that's right into the feeling. I know you mad. I know you feeling this. I know you this. I know you respond to this. I know you about to jump into the protest. And some, you know, as poets, it's not always necessarily full action, right? It's not necessarily the physical part, but it's definitely the reflective part, and every part of that plays, you know, its own place in the movement. You know, we know everything was happening around Marvin Gaye. Nobody says nothing to him about what's going on. Oh, you was just singing? That's what you was doing while all this was happening? You was just singing? You know, so yeah, yeah, he was singing, right? Somebody had to set the background for that. Somebody had to set the history for that. And so I think what we all get an opportunity to do as writers is to write what nobody's asking us. And I'm glad that we can do that.
Wow, thank you very much for sharing. You know, so again, I keep telling people G is a philosopher, but the point that you made about writing about what no one asked, you know, basically saying that you have voiceless people and voiceless or feelings, emotions, and thoughts that aren't being heard, experiences that aren't being recognized. And as an artist, what I'm hearing you say is that's what you're doing. You're giving them voice. You're showing people those experiences, and I mean that's just profound to me. So for the next question, when we're talking about advocating for change, okay. So when you're talking about advocating for change, you know, you think about what's going on in this world. G mentioned, you know, Marvin Gaye and even the song "What's Going On." I think even about the song he did, "Mercy, Mercy Me," you know. And when you think about the artist and yourself as an artist, are there any like any one piece or thought that you had about advocating for change? Like, how have you made that real in your pieces? Victor?
You know, it has a lot to do. Well, just to go back a little bit of when G was saying, you know, the questions no one is asking us. I often think of poets as the journalists, artistic journalists, because sure, no one asked me particularly what's going on, but I had the question myself. Sometimes I had to look within to see what the answer was, because the way the world is going, sometimes you get the feeling I just want to snap up some white folks, but you can't go out and do that. And so rather than going out as a creative person and just dealing with my frustration the way many people do, I choose to put that frustration on the page. So I'm answering questions that I ask myself. But I think too, when you speak of giving voice to the voiceless, a lot of times some people don't even know which questions to ask. And so sometimes our poetry is the journalism of the artistic world. But I mean, when you talk about pieces, it really, for me, what really resonates with me is I write what I want to hear. And people think, I know people think that people like us sit back lighting incense, playing Erykah Badu, thinking of which cliche we can turn into a masterpiece, but I write way more than I ever share. And I think that that has to do with me figuring out as an artist, when it comes to revolution, or when it comes to protest, or when it comes to sorting this stuff out, I sort it out with me first. But I think, to G's point, we have a duty to share these things because we're able. When we write this stuff, it ain't just temporary. There are people that remember pieces that G did 20 years ago. There are people that remember the things that we do, and it comes back up because it resonates with them. It's not just temporary. I don't write poems and then throw them in the trash, or some of them I keep in a journal, but they live. And I think when our art lives, to me, it sends a message that we live, what we write about lives. And so I don't keep them as children. My pieces are not children, but they're more like medicine. And in my Buddhist practice, we talk about turning poison into medicine. And I think what that has to do with what we're talking about is these poems are healing for me, and I pray that they're healing for other people. And so I hope that gets to your question.
It actually does. I appreciate you sharing that. And I'm gonna go to the next person next, but I just have to say this. You said, you write more than you share. So most people don't know that I write poetry all the time, and I don't share it with anyone. I have like 2 books full that no one will ever see. And every now and again, I'll share it with someone. Like I wrote a piece that hopefully it was seen at the beginning of this show, called Guilty to Death, that I sent to Victor. I don't remember what day that was, at some point. And he said, "Oh," I was like, "But I need to update it a little bit. I don't really like it." And then it just resonated with what's going on today. I'm like, maybe I can change some pieces. And he said, real artwork is ever changing. Like it's never done. So don't feel like you can't change it. And so I appreciate that about you, because that was like really profound for me. But just to think about it, the other piece that you said is people remember what you do years after you do it, and because it resonates with you. And that Just So Sweet in the Morning always resonates with me as I think about the storms that we go through, and we always are down, but we always forget that it's going to be sweet in the morning. Like there's going to be something great after this if we keep going. So yeah.
And you can thank G for that. That was all Gerard. I had no intention of ever singing that publicly until Gerard heard me at an open mic for Ada Bendele's book, Peel Back the Skin. And that's when G said, "Hey, I know audition's over, but we got to put you in the show." And I'm so grateful. Thank you, Gerard, for that. Thank you, G, for that.
Yeah. All right, Ephraim. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I'm going to speak to that as well, and then make sure I go back to as far as how it advocates for change. But like you said, realizing this piece is like some of the pieces aren't like these children and protecting, like realizing once I share it, right, it's not mine anymore. And that's like a hard thing because there's so much ego involved. The piece can be 2 years old. I'm like, it's too old. No, I'm not doing that piece. There's people there that's like, I like that. That was doing something for me. I want to hear it, but I'm like, oh no, I'm better than that. I got to prove I'm better than that, but not doing no old pieces. But just like letting that go and letting the poem do the work that it's doing. But also realizing like, yes, the piece does change over time, and I'll go through so many drafts and so many edits, but still allowing all of them to live and do their thing. But also as far as like advocating for change, I'm also just like cataloging this journey that I'm having with the change in myself, and inviting others to see that. And a lot of the pieces that hit me the hardest are the ones that let me know I'm not alone. And so wanting to provide that moment for others, but it's also happening for both of us, because sometimes there'll be something I'm writing and I'm thinking I'm the only person going through this, but I need to get it off my chest, and I'll go somewhere and perform it, and it'll be somewhere there in the audience like, yo, I really felt that really resonated with me. And so it's important for both of us in that moment to realize that, but not everyone is going to, like you said, speak out or share that, maybe these things that they're just keeping on the inside. And so I think there's so much change that even happens in showing the connection that we have and knowing that we're not alone in these things that we're passionate about or we feel that should change, that other people are thinking that too. And so that we can get together with those people and make the change we want to see. So yeah, like I think I was mentioned before it was so much like preaching on this is what y'all need to do. But once I started speaking to myself, it had a much greater impact, and I was able to connect to people in a much stronger way.
Thank you very much. Darius is next. I know he did let me know that his power went out, so he may not be on video, but you want to share your response via voice?
Yeah. Yes. Thinking about this word change and like how artists engage with that word, particularly like how we gather together, and what we're doing, how we're doing change. I think about the fact that, even going backwards is a change, and how I think even the artists on this call do so much more than advocate for change in a general sense. And I know I'm not hosting, but I'm really interested in like what types of change folks engage in. That's perhaps maybe a later follow-up question. But thinking about for myself, listening to y'all too, I thought about the last poets. Niggas are scared of revolution when he said, all niggas do is change. And so like being a Black poet, it's especially within this country, there's something that is always being reinvented. Something is always being pushed back against, whether we're being accepted or not. And so I think that we can't help but to be engaged in some process or some form of change, whether we're pushing up against something by being our authentic selves, or trying to gain entry inside of a place by being something that white supremacy and capitalism has told us that we need to be in order to get access. So I think in that general sense, we're all doing that. For me personally, much of my change has to do with demolishing systems of oppression, both within myself and externally. The change has to do with healing, which a lot of folks have already spoke to as well, and correcting, or not correcting, undoing some of the trauma, some of the missing pieces that I think I've amassed in my life so far. So I think, yeah, the types of change that I'm interested in are healing, restoration. I'm interested in revolution, both creating revolutionary poems, revolutionary spaces, all of that. I'm also really interested in dismantling and redistribution. So redistributing the idea of what it means to be a poet, what it means to be a writer, what it means to be a performer. One of my favorite poets, and he's all my favorite poets are revolutionary. So this cat, he's both an organizer and a poet, Tango Isa Martin. Our first day, he taught a section of our workshop in grad school, our MFA workshop. And he said, on one of the first days, he said, why are we doing poems in here? Right. So I attend Mills College, and it's in Oakland, in East Oakland. It's a gated community. East Oakland is one of the most violent parts of Oakland. Right. So it's like, he said, down the street, motherfuckers shooting with AK-47s. Why are we not doing poems out there? And so I carry that spirit of breaking down barriers in what I write and how I perform and how I engage with arts in general. So, yeah.
All right, Damon, then G. If you just want to go right after each other, that's fine.
For sure. Yeah, when it comes to change, you know, I mentioned when I first got on the panel today, some background in politics and organizing and things like that. So these are mediums and things that you are literally directing and being a part of change. You are literally being active and out in the community and meeting people and doing all of these things. For me, my personal journey, as I maybe selfishly, I got to a point where I wasn't maybe seeing the change that I thought I could see in that process, or maybe internally, it wasn't quite giving me that satisfaction that I was doing my all. Something that I had done for years prior to this, which was writing poetry, writing songs. So my evolution to being a performance artist actually evolved after my engagement in community and activism and organizing and politics. Um, then I went through a process of also, you know, evolving with social media and speaking to different audience and curating information, and that fine line between professionalism and presenting your authentic self, your authentic emotions and feelings, especially as an artist when you're translating pain and having empathy for some of these things that we witness as Black men, or we go through, or we experience. For me, and it was mentioned before, I forget who exactly said it. It might have been G. But healing is a big part. I feel like in my lyricism, and I'm always trying to relate to the next man or woman on what kind of work within themselves do they have to do, because I do feel like a lot of us have more in common than we do not. So back to the point of, a lot of this for me is self healing and catharsis, and the connection is you seeing a little bit of yourself in me and vice versa when you read one of my pieces or experience one of them live or you hear it on a song. And just one more point, this was actually a moment, the George Floyd incident, and you know, I won't fake the funk at all. The energy that I saw around these rebellions and uprisings, if you will, and city to city, and the diverse coalition I'm seeing, it once again reinvigorated me. And that side of me that I felt like had been dormant for so long, that activism side. So I have participated in some protests, and I feel like I needed to like touch the people and see these things up close and witness this tension between the police and our community up close and personal. And I feel like that's only going to strengthen the art and the craft from here on out. Um, so this is definitely an interesting time period. I feel awoken and awakened and reinvigorated, and I definitely relate to a lot of the things that have already been said by these brothers so far.
Yeah, we just unmuted. Thank you, guys. I won't rehash a lot of what was said. I think, I mean, you know, the wisdom on this group is really profound. So there's not a lot I have to really rehash about. I know more or less talking to each other. I'm on my phone, so I can't see who we're talking to on Facebook, about just writing and never getting to reveal, and never getting to say, but really how important that is. I know you had the same classes with Dr. Peters. I know he just always says when we talk about him as our children that we just at least got to name them, right? Like, just don't leave those kids out there with no name, right? When they come from you, you know, those are definitely your babies. And I think Ephraim was saying something, you know, along those lines as well, even more about just doing those pieces again. And I keep always referring back to music. I think we all come common with it. But even when I heard this interview with like Salt and Pepper, I talked about this the other day with our group, like they hate doing Push It. That's what I heard. Like they just hate doing it, but the people love it, right? And so even when they hate it, the people who have known them and have grown from it are still feel some kind of nostalgia towards that piece, want to hear Salt and Pepper do Push It 30 years later. So Ephraim, what you've done to people has sparked them in some way. They have to have that piece of you. So I think it's great. I don't have any more to say really about the change.
Okay, thank you. I'm not sure if it was my connection or if it was G's connection, but I lost you, brother, after you said the piece about Dr. Peters. So I don't know if we might come back to you if you want to share something else.
I think Darius hashed out what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Well, I tried.
Yeah, your connection's still acting up,
We are
G.
fortunate. We're picking up to keep things sane. So that I won't really rehash on that point. I know we want to go on to the next one.
All right. So can everybody hear me? Yes. Okay. So I see we're having
that's probably
bad connection. G is gonna try to rejoin us. Matt's Truuuth said they don't want to hear the people. The people don't want to hear the truth. So it's a conspiracy. So now you're up. Now you're sideways, G. So we're gonna hopefully try to hear what he was saying, and then if not, we're gonna go for it. G, are you back with us?
Yeah, I'm here, but it looks like I ain't.
Oh no, it's back now. Right. You want to wrap up maybe the last few things you were saying?
No, man, just keep it moving. Don't wait on me. Just keep it going. I appreciate the time, but keep it going. Keep it going.
Okay. All right. Thank you all for that. Our next question is about the pandemic and the protests and police brutality and the senseless, horrific murder, and yes, I said murder, of George Floyd. There's no other way to describe that inhumane, disturbing occurrence. I don't know about any of you, but when I watched the video, which I sometimes regret that I did, because I keep hearing him yell for his mama. And, that just, I mean, all of you know I lost my mom, and that just hits me. I think more like that. I think that's what has invigorated my anger, is that he literally, before he took his last breath, the last thing he could do and say was call for his mom, meaning he has lost all hope. And that is tragic. So when you think about the pandemic, coupled with police brutality, that senseless act, and the protest that has followed, that has not stopped, by the way. How has that affected you, your art form, how you have been able to present your art? Can you talk about how that has impacted you as artists?
Well,
And we're
for
going to
me,
start with the same order.
for me, it's beginning with the pandemic. Before any of the protests happened, I mean, I wasn't performing any place. You know, I wasn't even interested in doing open mics. I was mostly interested in healing, uh, visiting my therapist, and getting myself together. But once the pandemic happened, the opportunity to do open mics virtually came up, and to do shows like this came up. And I took advantage of that because I needed to have that kind of connection with people through these virtual open mics all over the country where I wouldn't have had an opportunity to see them. Um, and so that alone is a new thing for me, is to do virtual open mics. But once the protests began and once George Floyd was murdered, I started to see some patterns. I started to see, number one, that unarmed Black people being killed, which has been happening for a very long time. But this one was different to me. And when I heard him calling for his mother, I cried for 2 days, man, because I understood when you call out for your mama, what that means. And my mom's watching right now. And it just hurt me to my core because, you know, mothers are natural resources and they don't bring children into the world to be taken away by a cop who doesn't understand what humanity is, or what a life is, and that he's a person and you don't just get to kill him. And that could have been any one of us at any given moment. And so when I saw him calling out for his mama, that just hurt me. Another thing that I saw that bothered me was the outpouring of allies, particularly white allies, coming and protesting, because even they could see that this is not supposed to happen. And what that reminded me of was when I left Eastern to go back to Detroit as a new poet performer, because I didn't do that before Eastern. I wrote poetry, but I never performed poetry until I got with Poetry Society and got to see that these words could mean something more than just, you know, journal entries. And when I got back to Detroit, this was around 2008, I noticed there were more white people in these historically Black neighborhoods, particularly 12th Street, where the uprising in the 60s happened. And I was uncomfortable with this neighborhood that my mother grew up in that was predominantly Black, and there were more white people. So I just didn't know what to make of that. And I wrote a piece in 2010 called Suburban Outfitters to talk about this new image of white people in these Black communities. And I saw that same thing during the protests. So many white people coming out. And I do know that revolution happens where it happens and with whom it happens. But what it made me think about is, who is an ally? You know, is anybody who shows up to the protest an ally? No, I don't think so. I think an ally is someone that we look at and say, this is what we can do. This is what we need you to do. Let's go out and do this. And so I just was uncomfortable with the number of white people I saw at these protests. Not to diminish the action, but to just an observation. And I went back to some of my old writing and brought those things out. And I can read that real quick if that's okay.
It's definitely okay.
It's called Suburban Outfitters. You not from here. Else you would know it takes more than a few well-placed intentions to change the conditions between these walls. You would see how your sheltered existence fuels your resistance, but I advise you to find yourself another cause. You can cross the great divide, even risk your life, but you will always have a place to return to. They will ask, what were you thinking going down there like that? They're afraid for you. You will always be suburban. No matter how many gardens you plant here, seeds you sow or harvest you sell. It still stings every time you use the word urban, ghetto, thug nigga. You euphemize these terms so that racism never earns the true response it demands. Such words will always mean black to you, so sit back as I tell you why you will never understand. Stop inviting me to your bonfires. Stop asking me why I stay. Stop feeding me your blue moon and give me the malt liquor you think I drink anyway. I don't do bonfires. And I don't fucking drink blue moon, and I stayed when you strayed, when my blackness was too much for you. You're not from here. Else you would know that my skin is not an assault on your Ep4 city on the hill, that it is not an act of terror, but an accident of birth that someone somewhere knew would be necessary. You come through as if you know what we go through. We laugh at you as you rub little black kids' nappy hair and let them call you Auntie Becky and Uncle Lou. We don't need you. And if you were from here, you would know that. And place your progressive mask right next to your sympathy and simply walk away.
Hey, I know it ain't my turn, man, but that was a jump right there, Victor.
Thank you so much, man. Thank you.
I don't even want to say that, man. That was right now and before and
Thank
still
you.
happening. I'm scared of the truth that's all up in that.
Thank you so much, man.
I love every piece of what you just said, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ephraim?
Yes. Oh man, thank you for sharing that. For real. As far as the pandemic, how it's changed things. Where I haven't been able to physically connect with people, and the energy of a space is really important for me. And these different venues and these poetry spaces have become a church for me, and so it's been very different not being able to interact in that way. And so many things have shifted online, and I still had this thirst to participate. So it was, doing different IG lives and things like that, but it's a very different experience. But it's also allowed me to connect with a lot of people, right? You could pop up in a bunch of different cities in one night through these different shows that I moved online. And as far as everything that's been going on, it's just reminding me my purpose with my work and what I'm striving for. And I don't know if y'all can hear the fireworks in the back, but it's fireworks in the back. But yeah, what this work is doing. And I know around the time when I was really starting to weigh heavy on me the murders that was taking place with Ferguson, and it was all these different people, and I had this what am I doing, and how am I aiding in this fight, and what is also the role that my art is playing, and is it going to have any impact at all? And I remember around the same time I was starting to ask myself those questions. I had read this interview where Kumar Ben Hassan of the Last Poets was talking to, I believe it was David Hilliard. I remember the Black Panther Party, and I'm paraphrasing, but he's basically like, man, when y'all was walking up there with y'all guns, when I seen y'all doing all this, this being on the front lines and all these things, I wanted to be right up there with y'all, and almost questioning, the where his art was coming from, comparing to them being on the front lines. And member of the Black Panther Party, responded to him as no, that's, your art is also bringing people here. Some of these people wouldn't be here joining, and it wouldn't have that same fire if it wasn't for the art that he was making. And so let me know that art has also been a part of every movement and how important that is. But also for me, I think there was a time where I got satisfied with the idea of I'm going to do my part and aid, and it won't happen in my lifetime, but this is what I can do to help going for that better tomorrow. But there was a moment where that alone wasn't enough. And like, how can I fight for a better tomorrow while also securing liberation today? And there is a piece of me that doesn't know how that liberation today happens here. But it's also something that's necessary for me. And so where else can I be, or what independent things do I need to set up for myself for that to exist, and the people who have the same idea of liberation as me, while also doing what I can to fight for things to get better here. And so just seeing everything is just, constantly reminding me of that, and why like I need that today, while also why I need to do what I can to fight for that tomorrow.
For sure. Yeah, I'm writing away over here. Y'all are bringing up such some relevant things. I just have a list. I'm gonna go down the level. For me right now, I think so. My plan over the summer was to get really clear, or start developing a better practice for myself in craft and poems, and writing and reading, and how I ingest, how I theorize about poetry and writing, but also my political practice, right? So my politics, and really understanding what politics have looked like in the past, radical politics in particular. We were getting more specific, revolutionary politics. And so like being inside has provided an opportunity to do some more digging into what I can be reading, what the folks who I'm reading have read. And so I've just amassed this huge stack of books. If I had the lights on, I would show y'all, but a lot of poetry books, a lot of political education books. So I'm really interested in what that looks like right now. Similarly to other folks had an experience of what we're going through right now in 2014. The difference for me right now is back then it was, I'm gonna get out in the streets, and it was like, we gonna stop this today. Except, I was more willing than a couple other people to put my body on the line in that way. And so now I'm both by pandemic and by location, forced to be inside more. So I have to ask myself, what other ways, what are you really doing? Not just what is your action, what is the goal, what is the intention of, being out in the streets, which very much so necessary, but also what are you going out there with? And so political education is something that's essential if we're really going to accomplish what we're all talking about, which I think is getting that revolution. Whether we're talking about minimal change, or creating a future where our children and people don't have to go through these things. It's about tearing down, redistributing, and building, making sure that we have systems outside of the things that exist right now. So yeah, political education has been heavy right now. With that, I've been thinking about, Victor brought up allies, and thinking about how they exist in a rebellion, particularly led by Black folks. And I am most interested in comrades versus allies. Allies tend to be these self-serving folks that, like you said, show up to the protest, show up to the action. And it's like, how can we help? Or, they're led, but you find your comrades doing similar work because they're guided by politics. And so I, as an anti-capitalist, will align myself and find myself in similar spaces doing similar work as other anti-capitalists, and the same for going for, anarchist, leftist, whatever you want to call it, communist. So I think that's super important, along with political education. Someone brought up how this watching this video was like, yo, this was different. And I think about what it takes for us as a culture and as a people to be broken by something, or to get active around it. Like, what are we requiring of our victims before we do something for them, right? And I think a lot of times it requires both the video, it requires some level of innocence, some sort of proximity to possibly education or other, white supremacist means of humanity, right? And so I wonder about that and how we can constantly push back against that. I'm talking really fast because I have a lot of things to say. The other thing that folks that's in the conversation right now is, art in resistance. And big homie, the person I brought up earlier, Tongo, he says we got to be careful not to tuck our revolution to things that we're already doing, right? Because it's a constant practice. So it's not that we can just say that, okay, our job is to create, and we're writing about it, and we're doing the thing, but we have to keep asking ourselves in the same way we have to keep asking the people around us, the society, the culture around us to keep changing. We too have to ask ourselves. And in my practice, in my writing, in my performance, in my friendships, in how I cook my breakfast, like how am I, tucking or pushing myself toward a revolutionary practice and all of that. So always want to encourage that too. And like, what does that look like? This is where evolution, Kwame Ture has a video where he talks about mobilization versus organization, and in that he really hits home the idea that freedom, the struggle, is a process and not an event. And so we're seeing a lot of events pop up. And I think, like y'all were talking about, the power in the artist is to somehow kick these things up beyond these mobilizations into organizations. So we have, we have an ability to connect systems in a way that a revolutionary does. Like, you look at how these things are connected, how they're impacting each other, and then displaying that, making it get palatable, if you will, to the people. I also want to lift up the names of Breonna Taylor, and Tony McDade specifically, in the same way. I wonder what it means for us to, sorry, one second, so I was reading the chat. Means for us to like be broken by something and to want to stand up and fight for it. Which people are we fighting for, right? Right now, Breonna Taylor's murderers, that she was killed a couple days before George Floyd, her murderers are still free. The cops that killed her, that were involved in that process, they just released a phony report where they both lied and redacted information from how they went about killing her. And so it's always pushing back against that, and right, how we as Black men take it upon ourselves to, within a movement, make sure that we're not participating in that system of oppression against Black women, against trans folks, against queer folks, right? And so always pushing back to that. Yeah, the last thing, I think what I'm seeing right now and how I'm being impacted is there's a lot of respectability that's going around about how we resist and what it means for someone to destroy a building, or what it means for people to be out in the streets in the middle of the night saying F the police. Sorry, yeah, I'm gonna wrap it up. This will be the last thing. I love this conversation. Okay, and so, yeah, I'm seeing that there are people who have not been organizing on a grassroots level. I'm not talking about a national organization that holds voting registration rallies or does charity every now and then, but actually is side by side, shoulder to shoulder with the people. We're not seeing those folks out leading the same charges. You have people that are opportunists. You have people that are really inexperienced in leading these things, leading marches. So in Detroit specifically, we're seeing a lot of marches that are, really parades, these rallies that don't really challenge the system in any way that would change the material reality of Black folks. And so I'm interested in what it looks like to be an artist sitting back, watch that. So I've been writing a lot more, pushing that out, writing texts, emails, and poems. And yeah, those are my thoughts. Let's stop there.
I love the energy. Can y'all hear me? Yeah, the energy is great, man.
Hear you. We can hear you.
All right. Yeah, the energy is great, man. I feel Darius right now too. Like it's so much we could talk about from so many different angles. And there's been a few times you brothers and spoke, and I'm just like, man, he hit it dead on exactly what I was feeling. And you feel some good points that went around. But as far as this pandemic for me, before the pandemic actually, and the protests, I was working on an album that was very self-reflective, very sort of like, I guess, me, just kind of me versus myself, in that I got a name change, a moniker change, if you will. I haven't feel like I've evolved. I haven't feel like my craft and my output was sounding a bit different than what I had released in the past. Then the pandemic comes, then it slowed me down, and the material that was coming out was darker, and it started feeling different. And frankly, since the past week or two, even before George Floyd, we did with Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor. May was a slow output month for me as far as writing. I'm somebody who writes almost every day. So it's been a very self-reflective period for me, but I think it's for the better. Like I said, it's like me having my antennas up to be able to be that vessel, or have that empathy frequency right, so that I'm capturing what needs to be captured in this moment. And I know in the right time, when I sit down to write, it's going to come out exactly how it's supposed to. But in some more direct ways of how this has affected me. When 2020 started, I had become one to make that revolution more personal, in that you know, you're eating right, working out, taking care of that mental health, that spiritual foundation, making sure that's tight, drinking your water, some of these fundamental things that allow us to continue to participate in this world and to be able to shift gears like that from quote unquote normalcy, which is now I guess toxic because, and that's not a word I use often, but you see all the protests, you see everybody sort of coming out, these allies and things like that. It's like taking a band-aid off and like, okay, the status quo, what was norm was really toxic for all of us, and everybody's coming out with an apology and reflecting and coming to and using their privilege to help in this cause so far. It is very overwhelming. So if anything I can say right now is just a sense of being overwhelmed, but also faith that the writing will come soon enough, and it's going to reflect this moment in history that we're living in.
I'm gonna try to jump in. Hopefully, I'm still here. Is that still there?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. I have no answer for this. I really don't. I'm still in the middle of it. I'm still in the middle of processing it because it's not new. It's like happening too much for me to even fully process. I'm constantly on calls right now, being an educator, and I lose even energy to discuss it because I don't get to walk away from it when the call is over or when the meeting ends. This isn't something that if y'all don't get it in this short period of time, you just don't get it, and that's fine. But for me, it's present in everything that I do, everywhere I go, everywhere I show up. So outside of this moment, I don't know. This moment, I can't even say it got to me. Like, I understand what Victor's saying, right? He was in tears, and each one of them is going to hit each of us a different way, right? Whereas I think a Trayvon Martin hit me a little bit more being an educator and seeing my young guys who just want to rock hoodies and they smart as heck, you know what I'm saying? And so I could only think this was just one of them. And so it's hard to write about this. It's hard to talk about it. It's hard for us to show up and be present in this moment and be the best version of ourselves and be honest about it. Like, I really don't have this is how I'm going to approach this response. I don't have it. I commend you guys. Darius off the hook with the energy. I love it, right? And I'm glad that he's been able to find that groove and understand what this means to him. But I haven't found it yet, and I'm okay with that. But I know it'll make sense to me eventually, and I'll get out what I need to get out. But I'm really still processing all of this. I really am. Yeah.
Thank you, G. I think that's very important. We all are processing it, and I can definitely relate to you as an educator. It is exhausting, and as a Black man, even if you're not an educator, you can't walk away from it because this is definitely something that we live every day. So I wanted to move to the last question. I had another question, but for interest of time, we know that technology and the weather kind of messed with us at the beginning, but we still want to get everybody out of here. So this is an opportunity where you might want to share a piece with you. And the question I have is, what's a favorite piece of yours, something that has moved you, that means a lot to you, and feel free to tell us why or share it with us today. So we're going to go ahead and go with Victor.
Oh, wow. Right now, my favorite piece is one that I haven't done publicly, except once I did it on the TV show in New York. But it was inspired by some things that one of my favorite poets, Joel Fluent Green in Detroit, was going through some things. And as an observer, I didn't call him, but I just wanted to tell him some things about, what I was seeing. And it also helped me with anxiety when I first got to New York. So it's called Breathe. There's nothing better than love, better than the way that you feel, better than the space that you feel. Remember the pressure, remember the pain, the rites of passage toward the world you gain. You got to know what to let go, got to know the weight of your heart. Balance is a practical art. We learn to love by the way that we live, the love we get, and the love that we give. It's so unusual the way he tried to do you, though you never understand him. His life is on demand. And the last time you saw him, he was on his way up, had to cue the redux, print another readout just to see how the story doesn't end this way, spending day after day throwing love after pain. I learned my lesson, so I guess I'll stay until another love flows my way, another chance to breathe. Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much, brother. Thank you. Ephraim, you're next.
Where man, I was thinking about this too, like, cause I honestly don't even have a favorite like piece right now. But as far as like things that I'm excited for to be exploring, is I'm working on a full length poetry collection and really want to talk about my experiences becoming a father, and especially the roles I think gender plays into our expectations around parenting, and how that impacts the way we see ourselves, the way we see others, and the way that impacts children as well. And so a lot of my work is diving into that right now, but also talking about poverty and class, and like it's in so much in that, but people really hate poor people, like legit hate. And even when they come in from all these different places, like, and I've been in a lot of spaces also where it's a space where I've never seen people pay attention this much to identity politics and making sure that they are recognizing where different people are coming from, and lifting up marginalized voices. But even in those spaces, the people who oftentimes you will still see silence as poor folk. And so really wanted to talk about my own experiences, and highlight that as well. But yeah, this ain't like a favorite piece, but it's short, so I'll do like an excerpt from not an excerpt, it's like one of the poems from the collection. Well, we'll see if it makes it. All right, generations of Adam, Genesis chapter 5, verses 32 through 50. And the day that God created man, he made him in the likeness of God. Male and female created he, and blessed male called male God, and patriarchy lived and lives, begat a world in its own likeness, and after its image called it tradition. And the days of tradition after had begotten roles for sons and daughters set in stone like commandments. Honor thy father and thy father's property. Roles for sons and daughters beget motherhood, said, let this also be womanhood, which beget a barren woman, ain't no woman at all. Beget a father's choice and a mother's obligation. Beget a silent suffering, a quiet resentment. Beget a rolling stone, an empty resting place. A Jesus kind of vanish. Beget your father right there, even when he ain't. Them his cheekbones, his eyebrows, his nose beget paternity test, be a stranger, beget custody and visitation, beget guardian ad litem, beget gavel decide where the blood is raised, beget might as well be gone if she gonna make me leave, beget might as well make him leave if he gonna be gone, beget my grandfather, beget my father, beget absence in a cycle of absence.
Most def.
Yeah, I was speechless. I'm sorry. Yeah. Wow. Darius.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. Thank you. I don't have a favorite. Been like scrapping pieces like crazy, starting over. As like I said, tried to develop newer understandings of who I am as a poet and as an artist. So yeah, this is a poem that I'm writing recently. Has been about Black boyhood, pushing back also against the finiteness, the finality of Black boys passing and Black boys' death, and humanity, particularly like what things, what structures, what people, what systems have gotten in the way of my humanity, and Black boys in general. So this is a poem. It's called "If I'm Caught Between a Badge and a Hard Place, 3 hours after the streetlights turn on." Will you church it? Will you serve it with Sunday dinner? Will you stretch it thin like goat skin over the shell of a djembe drum? Will you slap it? Will you let the echo dance naked in the wet cave of your throat? Will you bark it? Will you sing it like my mother is listening? Will you inhale until your lungs nearly burst, then inhale some more? Then will you say my name? Will you put some stank on it? Will you James Brown it? Will you juke join it? How can I rest in peace or power if you get all lazy lipped when you talking about me? Will you stir it thick on your tongue like a pan of mac and cheese fresh out the oven? Will you while the secret ingredient cements in your throat like a bad cough? Will you let it marinate? Will you name a city of fire after me? Will you paint downtown a scorching hue? Will you stain the sky in black smoke? If you say my name and cast iron skillets don't start rattling, that means you ain't saying it loud enough. Will you say it again? If a redwood don't split open from the trunk, that means you ain't pronounced it right. Will you say it again? Will you scream it? Will you stand in the center of rush hour traffic to let them know what kind of boots I wore? Will you stomp it into the soil of my last known location? Will you dance it? Will you Saturday night praise it? Will you tambourine it? Will you howl, screech, moan? Will you shriek it? Will you siren wail it? Will you cry for me? Will you?
Wow. Wow.
You brothers are powerful. Wow.
This is powerful, man.
That's Truuuth.
Oh man. Yes. I picked a piece that I wrote in 2015. This was like, I might even say BC, before code, because one, that was my alias, Ice Cold Sophist. But after the Tamir Rice incident in late 2014, once, there's outrage, and once I saw how they took that 13-year-old kid's life in a matter of 2 seconds of just seeing him, like, even though the caller said, hey, he probably has a cap gun, I don't know. After that, I lost a lot of hope, and I feel like I became very withdrawn inward into a lot of my art. And I don't even think I've shared this ever, the piece I'm about to say, but like I said, I feel reinvigorated with the energy that's around the life of George Floyd. But this piece to me is just as relevant as when I wrote it. It's called Tamir Back. They screaming Illuminati, yo, they coming for Hove. You think of the rapper, I think of my soul. They murdered Tamir, they said they thought he was grown. When I look in the mirror, I just reflect on my own. Child of God, life is hard, dodging these killers and robbers. Then indict those cops, yet they canceled the Cosbys. Yo, we came from the block, kept that heat like O'Reilly. Can you imagine me, your top on my condemned to be silenced? Imagine me, more than just a block, boy. Even Supreme Court justices be trying to cock block, trying to go for my master's foot on my back. Go to graduate, no time or patience for the slow track. Do my best, navigate these classes past life's lessons. First they love you to death, then they tarnish your legacy. You could be a LeBron or you could be an Obama, but soon enough in due time, you just drown in the drama. Go up here before honor, now you confessing your sins, guilty until proven innocent, losing all your best friends. The media-driven narrative never really stood a chance. You live your life with such promise until them promises end. Man, what's the fucking use? Got to jot it with a pen, writing engineering verses. They want to see me in a pen. They want to see me in a bind. They want to see me in a struggle. They want to get inside my mind, but can't attest to my hustle. They can't attest to this testimony, trying to give it all I got. Fear and failure more than any fear of a cop. I've been paying my dues, so I lay my soul on the track. Ain't got no time to be crying. I'm screaming Tamir back. R.I.P. Tamir Rice.
Wow. Thank you, brother. Wow, thank you. G. Wow.
Yeah. I'm blown away in these moments, y'all. You guys are fantastic. You guys are absolutely fantastic. I'm trying to recall where you put us at. You said something that was really important to us that we wrote. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yes.
So mine is my way into war piece, and I for sure can't remember all of it. But way into war was important for me because I felt like we were in a lot of cases lacking a lot of leadership. So no, I don't know it by heart, and you know my internet is bad. I can't even. I've been trying to pull it up for the last couple minutes. I don't know if you have something to transition to. In between, I'll still keep trying to pull it up, but I cannot get on it right now. So I don't know if you have something to say in between, but I'll try to find it. Give me just a second, please.
Yeah, no problem. I think since I'm not sure if my poem showed earlier, but you did get a request. I'm nowhere near as prophetic as they are, but nor do I perform. So I'm just gonna read it so that you can kind of feel it. Guilty to death. Timer set, shoes laced, 3 deep breaths. Go. Off on a daily run, stopwatch records the fastest time yet. Black man, hands up. Look like you just ran out of luck. Assumed to be lost, you can't be from around here. Police called. Black man, fit the description. Always. Thrown to the ground, knee to the throat, handcuffed. You're still a threat to us. Black man, stop resisting arrest. Hands shackled behind your back. Your resistance is still fear, justifying use of force. Black man, pistol to the face. Point blank, no seconds left, no court, no trial, guilty. A run becomes sentencing. No suit, no tie, no degree makes you free. Because when America looks at you, all they see is black man, pow, pow.
Wow. There's so much truth in there. And never discount your abilities as a poet, as a writer, because we're our own competition. Because everybody know I ain't as good as Darius. No, but we all are our own competition. And so, you know, everything that we contribute is good, and I receive it all.
Right. And so, G, are you ready? If not, I'll do one thing that I was going to do at the end, but I can do it now and then let you take us out.
I won't mess up your flow, so I'm gonna just read something that I already have.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, this is not the one I want, but this is definitely hopefully backing up with what Victor was saying earlier. This is called Primary Colors. They drew lines around us, defined us by color. We black, they white, the lines red. And instead of freeing them, we being them. Loving the black bottom, living in the exact bottom, without a resource for recourse. Juking and jiving, slanging, high-fiving, we were stuck. Lapped up and stacked on top of each other in project housing, we was the project, to see how many Negroes can color between the lines, the red lines drawn around us. You know what that did? You know what hypocrisy is? You know what equity is? It's the same ones claiming to make it off grit when they've been handed it. They done branded it with legacy ties and nepotism, politicalizing conservatism. Oh, we so bad if we defy the code of conduct, if we exceed the social construct. They told us to color between the lines, the red lines, the lines that can find us. With just a glimmer of chance, glimmer of chance, gave us drink, watched us dance, jailed us men, sold us scams, deep rooted in scripture. Oh, what a perfect picture. America's an artist, painting in primary colors, the red lines and yellow lines under blue skies. Learn to separate the blacks and the whites with green. Stole from the brown under the orange moon. Oh, when the colors fade, smeared over some blank canvas, drip dried into some abstract, attempting to be cultured. But just as ugly as our history, like that damn Mona Lisa. see how the old masters mastered their pieces and turned them priceless, and what we viewed as valueless. Bound by the borders built around us, pictured us in parameters, police praying for roundups, gentrifying the ghettos, glorifying our graffiti. We made art captivating on concrete campuses and couldn't cross the lines. They'd be invisible, but clearly defined. Those red lines, the lines drawn around us. That's it.
Wow. Thank you, brother. Thank you very much for sharing that. Yeah, that was pretty powerful, brother. It really was. So one thing that we're gonna end, I want to thank each one of the brothers for being here. I just wanted to share with you all something that hopefully will be on your screen. I believe that's important as we have artists sharing with us their artistry and all that they are doing. We don't respect art enough, in my opinion. And so if you want to consider supporting them, you can follow them on social media and even throw them a few dollars in one of their Cash App or Venmo options if they chose to give you that. That's the way we can support artists to continue to sharing their art and speaking for us and to us about what we see in society and how we're feeling. A lot of times when we can't say it ourselves. And as Victor, I think, said, because no one asked us, right? So go ahead and support that. And with that being said, I would like to just thank each one of our panelists. If each of you could turn your videos on, if you can. Looks like we might have lost Darius, unfortunately. Oh, no, he's still there.
No,
okay.
still here.
Yep, sorry, I looked like you were gone on my end. But I just want to thank you. All you gentlemen are just phenomenal. I'm just blessed and excited to be able to be in the presence of your wisdom, to be in the company of the knowledge and the passion that each of you share with all of us. I'm glad that we were able to have this experience together. And thank you again. Any final words that anyone wants to share? I heard a lot about healing, and I think that that's what art does for so many people. So any final, 30-second words anybody wants to share before we log out?
Oh, I got a couple of things. That was G's wisdom. Nobody asked. I will never forget he said that. And I just appreciate brothers getting together because I needed this. So thank you for having us, and thank you for receiving our words. And I love all of you.
Yes, thank you. Anyone else?
Just want to say I appreciate you brothers as well. Good energy. It was mentioned earlier on our chat that it's not a lot of spaces for Black men to vent, and that next morning after one of these incidents is happening, no one's asking like, how are you doing? How do you feel? We just usually kind of move on about our day, but this is a time to reflect, and it was a time to vent and come together and share our experiences and how we feeling. And I wish you brothers the best in your writing and your craft moving forward. This is history, and we're all a part of it.
Yeah. Thank you, NJ, of course, for inviting me in. Just thank you guys also for sharing the space, man. I'm glad this was positive. It was good to hear from everybody, meet folks that I haven't met. So that's always good. It's always positive, man. They say you meet a new stranger every day. I'm glad y'all was the two strangers that I met today, man. Y'all some good folks. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, same as everybody else said, man. It's really glad to share this space with y'all. It's been a great experience. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
no more than to say, but thank you, NJ. Thank you to all the artists, educators on the call. stoked to share the space and conversation with you.
All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. We will be back again on Sunday. And Sunday we will we talked a lot about healing today, but on Sunday we will actually talk to professionals who are in the work of healing us all in many different ways. So we'll have some Black men within the mental health profession joining on Monday, or on Sunday at 8:30. And with that being said, I'm going to ask us all to mute, and we're gonna log out here. All right. So thank you everyone for joining.
You sure?